The idea is to talk about the public sector units in India and how they've done under the NDA regime. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has hailed the revival of PSU companies in the last 10 years under the NDA regime, and he was addressing the Rajya Sabha where he said that investor confidence is rising in the sector and that their profits have risen multifold under the NDA rule. Training his guns on the Congress, he's accused the Grand Old Party of destroying companies like Hindustan Aeronautics and BSNL and MTNL. Listen in to what he said in the Rajya Sabha.
BSNL, MTNL को बर्बाद करने वाले कौन थे? वो कौन सा कालखंड था जब BSNL, MTNL बर्बाद हो चुके? जरा याद कीजिए, HAL उसकी दुर्दशा क्या करके रखी थी, बर्बादी। जिस BSNL को आपने तबाह करके छोड़ा था ना, वो BSNL आज मेड इन इंडिया 4G, 5G उस तरफ आगे बढ़ रहा है और दुनिया का ध्यान आकर्षित कर रहा है। 2014 में देश में 234 PSUs थे, 234 2000 उनके यूपीए के 10 साल के कालखंड में। अब 14 में जब उन्होंने छोड़ा 234 आज 254 है। 234 थे, आज 254 है।
Well, while the Prime Minister is sounding very upbeat on the performance of public sector units, what about the road ahead? We got in a word from Kotak Securities and they're advising caution. They say caution is warranted in PSUs. They say that there are several medium-term risks. Let's find out what those are. Shesha, my colleague, has been going through the highlights of what Kotak Securities has said, and she's joining us in the Mumbai newsroom. Shesha, what are they saying?
Well, yes, BSE PSU index is up nearly 1% today. In fact, it has run up nearly 92% in the last 1 year alone. And capital goods, financial, oil and gas, utility companies is what has led growth or led momentum for PSU stocks over the last 1 year. But Kotak has rather come out with a bearish note on this counter, where they say that they find it hard to subscribe to market's new narrative of PSUs. They also say that market is overly focused on near-term ordering and profitability, and they find certain assumptions surrounding medium and long-term growth and profitability to be highly optimistic. They also say that marketing ignoring long-term downside risk to these companies, which includes the likes of medium-term profitability, business model challenges and disruption risks. So clearly a negative report that has come in from Kotak. The index, of course, is gaining in trade today.
That's true, Shesha. Let's get in a word from Vinit Bolinjkar, who's the head of research at Ventura Securities, about the entire PSU universe. Mr. Bolinjkar, good evening. Thanks for joining us on India Tonight. In your assessment, in real terms, what's the true value that PSUs have delivered to investors in this period from 2014 onwards, when the current dispensation came into government, to now, compared to what the private sector has delivered to investors?
So, the PSU basket was betrothed with a lot of low valuations, highlighting the inefficiencies of the previous decade prior to the NDA. But with the NDA coming in, there was a lot of stress on fiscal discipline and growth. And this has led to the sectors doing really well and coming up and, letting value run. So we believe that this efficiency gain is going to be a continuous process, and they will also be part of the heavy lifting in terms of the capex, especially on the infrastructure side that is being carried out. Notably, if you see PSU banks, their valuations are extremely cheap, while their return on equity is comparable to very many of the large private banks. In addition, if you see the PSU basket, there is a lot of efficiency gains coming in because of promotion of leadership from within the organization of people who know the business and are able to lead it from the front. So with strong leadership, efficiency gains and government promoted growth factors, I think the PSU basket still has a lot of room to grow. And I think over the next dispensation, if the Modi government were to come back, continuation of policy will mean that, they continue to deliver value for shareholders.
So even with current valuations, you're seeing more upsides to PSU stocks. But I'm looking at the BSE PSU index, its performance over the last 5 years. There's a gain, a definite gain of more than 169%. But would you say that some of the gains in India's PSUs has come at the cost of growth of the private sector?
No, I wouldn't say it has come at the cost of the growth of the private sector. But we have to appreciate the fact that the private sector was slow in gearing up to capex, and during that interim, it is the PSEs or the government promoted entities which have borne the brunt of the capex boom. And practically, if you see, it is more of an infrastructure-led growth, and companies within the infrastructure are largely promoted by the government, and hence we have seen a lot of growth coming from there.
In a historical context, like you pointed out yourself, government-owned companies, they've been trading at discounts to their private peers. And that gap has now narrowed in the last couple of years. So going ahead, you're seeing this sustained growth in PSUs, like you highlighted, if the current dispensation especially stays on after the general elections. In which case, what happens to the disinvestment plans? Remarkably, there is no disinvestment target that has been set by the finance minister in the interim budget this time. What do you see happening on that front?
So, why do you disinvest? You disinvest when there is a time for fund paucity, right? With the government coffers looking up, fiscal deficit, coming down, and, with the government doing partial divestment, just look at the way IREDA has added value. They did a 3% disinvestment, and look at the tremendous value that has been created. So while I don't say that, that divestment will not come through, I think it will be more out of choice and rather than out of compulsion that you need to divest. So to that extent, government now has the flexibility to decide whether they would like to divest. And with the government not on anvil to sell the family silver at throwaway rates, I think the PSU valuations are going to be on a track of self-discovery. And the earlier arbitrage which was created by the investment bankers where they would sell the stock down and buy it back when the divestment was done.
Yes.
That story is a thing of the past.
So then in this kind of scenario, which are the companies and particularly the sectors? Because I heard you mention banks as well, but the public sector universe has different kinds of companies. Where do you see maximum value right now going ahead into the future, the kind of added momentum this space could generate?
Oil and gas, PSU banks, and also some infrastructure companies should do really well going ahead.
It's a pleasure having you on India Tonight with your perspective on the subject of the day. It's about public sector unit. The Prime Minister has been very vocal about how well that entire universe has done under the NDA regime, and we'll see the kind of value it generates in times to come as well, especially if the NDA regime continues after the general elections. Thanks very much for joining us. Meanwhile, today in the Indian markets, we've seen a flat close. The Nifty has sustained the 21,900 levels. This has happened for the second day on the trot, with SBI and JSW Steel as the top gainers. Tech Mahindra and Power Grid, those two came under pressure. And sectorally, we've seen the IT pack turn out to be the top drag today. But most of the indices have ended in the green. PSU banks, of course, leading that rally. Realty stocks have lent support in trade. Meanwhile, of course, we are looking at a power-packed lineup at the 8th Global Business Summit. It's playing out in Delhi between the 9th and 10th of February.